Welcome everyone to our session, Creating Communities. I see it's gonna be hard to beat that last session, but hope we can be just as fun. I'm Liz Kim and I'm art director at M Booth, and I'm also a board member at Asians in Advertising. And this session is all about creating communities, and we have some amazing speakers here. So I'm just gonna let everyone just introduce themselves a little bit. So I'll start with Tim.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tim. My pronouns are he, him. I am the co-founder of Haerfest, which is a modern accessories brand based in New York City. I was born and raised in New York, native New Yorker, and I grew up really passionate about design and decided to study fashion design at FIT and branding at Parsons. And my first job was in advertising at an agency called Anomaly, where I was working on new business with clients like Nestle, Coca-Cola, and Converse. But my true passion was in making things. And so I decided to take a major career change to fashion. And I ended up working at a cool company called Opening Ceremony, where I learned the ins and outs of fashion. And in 2011, I decided to become an entrepreneur and join forces with my brother to start Haerfest.
Amazing. And maybe Eric, do you want to introduce yourself a little?
Cool. I have to say, first and foremost, I feel like I'm getting like free Asian therapy through watching all these. So this is exciting. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Eastern Standard Times. It's a division of EST Media. We're a brand new company. We're a new voice of journalism. We represent global Asian diaspora. You can go to easternstandardtimes.com if you're curious. I've been 20 plus years in film, TV, music. A lot of people know me as a music video executive producer. Started since I was 18, 43 now. Work with artists like Beyonce and Kendrick Lamar and Travis Scott. We just announced our first film project with EST, which is pretty awesome. It's with Anderson .Paak. It's really relevant to, I feel like this AAPI month. Anderson .Paak, his mom's actually born in Korea. He's biracial, so we're going to be filming this in Seoul this fall, which is pretty exciting. It's kind of a love story to his Korean heritage as a biracial entertainer. Some of the stories we talk about are about, whether it's identity or, relationships with parents and all sorts of fun stuff you guys see on our website. But for me, I was born in Southern Ohio. My parents are from Taiwan, grew up in Irvine, Orange County when it was, there were no Asians, which is interesting in the 80s, if you knew that. There's a lot of Asians in Irvine now, and just excited to be here.
Amazing. And last but not least, Mara, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Well, great to meet you both, Eric and Tim, and I'm excited to hear more of your stories. So I'm Mara Lecocq. I lead brand creative at Fishbowl, which is an anonymous social network for professionals of the same industry to have honest career conversations. And I was born and raised in the Philippines, spent 14 years there before going to France. I'm half Filipino, half French, and I've been living in North America for 10 years now. I'm an advertising creative director by trade. I used to work at AKQA, at BETC Paris, at 72 and Sunny, and freelance for Media Monks and McCann and Gray and everything. And that's relevant to what I'm going to share in a bit. And I did a couple of side hustles, and one of them is called Where Are the Boss Ladies? And it's the largest database of senior women leaders in advertising, which is where also I built community with women in advertising, and we did events and everything. And which has led me to work at Fishbowl, which is, as Liz put it last time, a community of communities. Can't wait to share more.
Yeah, I'm so lucky that I have the three of you guys as my panelists, because I think we all come from very different backgrounds. And maybe I would just love if we could take this time for each one of you to talk a little bit about the community that you guys have created with your platform and what inspired you guys to do so, because I think we all have three very different communities that we've all created. So maybe we can have Tim start with Haerfest.
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, we're an accessories brand, and that's how we started. So our initial platform we created showcase stories around like commute, travel, entrepreneurship. But fast forward to the pandemic, where travel came to a halt, and work from home was kind of like the new norm, we were kind of in deep crisis on wondering like what to do with the business. But during that time, we saw a lot of our API friends, speaking out on the anti-Asian violence and sentiment that was happening on social media. And that really empowered my brother and I to use our platform to raise awareness, because it really wasn't being covered at that time initially on mainstream media. And so we actually personally never had experience with communicating messages around social causes. We were almost kind of like, maybe it's the safest just to like not say anything, but this really hit so close to home. And the thing that we were confident on was to just talk about our own personal experiences. So we actually launched a campaign called Nothing Changes If Nothing Changes, just to remind our community that, change doesn't happen on its own. And so we just leaned into what we knew we were good at, which was design and apparel. And we created t-shirts and hats to donate, for sale to donate and support organizations like Stop AAPI Hate. And actually, to our surprise, it was a huge success with our community support. And it really inspired us to pivot and focus on more social cause related projects. And actually, our most recent one is called Support, where we use our platform to support and uplift BIPOC creatives by sharing their work and their stories. And, I kind of want to sometimes think like I wish a younger me could see more people that look like me in these kind of creative leadership roles. And I just hope that this initiative could further validate young BIPOC creatives to feel like they really belong in this space and feel less alone.
It's awesome.
Eric, do you want to maybe talk about your platform a little bit and the community?
Yeah, for sure. And we're, again, as I mentioned earlier, we're just starting. We're like 6 months into our launch, but we've been developing this for 2 years now underground. And it actually starts about 5 or 6 years ago. I got to give a lot of credit to my co-founder, Jason Mott. Some of you guys might know Jason, co-founder of AIA Rising. You kind of hear, the reason I bring up like my backstory with all these different artists is I worked with a lot of Western artists. I didn't work with Asian artists. And so when I saw 88 Rising, I'm like, what? Like, check this out. Like, Rich Brian's from Indonesia, Keith A's from Korea. Like, there's just this global Asian youth movement that was just so exciting, and even for us at Vice, which we thought we were so cool at that time, 2015 or so, we're just like blown away by how amazing the rise of the rise of the East is. And, it's just different than when I grew up, and I didn't have an Asian American community. I mean, it's very honest. I think we all talked about it even before. And it's like, I had to go build my own essentially, because you get older, and I'm 20 years in my career, and I'm very blessed. I won't, there's no regrets. But when you start so young and you're in Hollywood and you're just pulled into this world of entertainment, I was always the only Asian person, in every meeting, every office, every executive position. And so it's just, on theme to this whole, Asians in advertising, I started to think about less about myself, to be honest, because it was okay. I still had a great life, but it was about the next Erics, who's the 20-year-old Eric who's in school now, in art school, and might need some mentorship, and create a career for themselves where they don't have to feel like they have to just work with Western artists, and that people that look like us also deserve to be on screen and be in media and be represented in those McDonald's commercials and all that fun stuff. And so it's amazing to see all the progress, but I felt like I needed to build a platform and a company, and a film, TV, media company that truly is a home, a safe place to really celebrate Asian voices, Asian entertainment, and untold stories. Also to give Jason credit, because I didn't fully understand this. He lived half his life in the Bay Area, half his life in Hong Kong. So the problem he was trying to solve early on was like, hey, look, Eric, like, when you're in Asia and anywhere else, like, especially if you're in Hong Kong or Singapore or Taiwan, you have your local news, but global news is still CNN Asia, Bloomberg Asia, BBC Asia. Western media still controls the Eastern narrative. And that was mind-blowing for me, for 60% of the world's population. The fact that there's still the fact that even there's Al Jazeera in the Middle East, right? And if there's Globos in Brazil and Latin America, but in Asia, the global news is still told through a Western lens. And so that was such a big, awesome problem to solve. We knew we had to really lean in and figure out how to do it. So so right before COVID, 2 years ago, we raised a bunch of money and we're launching now.
Amazing. I mean, Asians in advertising is still a fairly new, young group too. Like we were only formed a year ago, and to see that within a year we've grown so much. And we're doing our first ever summit with I think we had about high 500 tickets sold for people to attend this. So
look at this. This is a big audience here. I saw you guys on a podcast, and I linked in one of you guys and stalked you down. Now I'm here, so I'm impressed.
it doesn't matter where. I think summits, organizations form out of necessity all the time. Maybe Mara, maybe you can talk a little bit about your community that you have created with.
That necessity too. Yeah. So I had been working in advertising for 15 years, and I had never had a female boss. I've had excellent male bosses, and actually about 15 of them. And I was freelancing at 72 and Sunny at that moment. And I felt, when you're freelancing, nobody really cares about you. I mean, they like you, but you're not really part of the team. And I felt the need of having a community. And I discovered Fishbowl back then. And I found community in the Women in Advertising Bowl, where you can speak about your issues and vent without, just feeling free as you would with your work bestie, virtual work besties. And I noticed that a lot of women were complaining about the fact that many agencies were white male dominated, and that they didn't see themselves, they didn't see their future selves or see their role models. And so it was in 2018, I started a spreadsheet that I posted in the Women in Advertising Bowl. So before there was a spreadsheet craze, which is really helpful for many people. And it was a magical moment because I only knew 5 female leaders. I was like, Colleen DeCourcy, who else, just to show the power of the community, everybody was adding their female bosses on the spreadsheet. And soon enough, we had more than 1,000 female leaders that women could go work for. So we started a database, so it became the largest database of senior women and leaders in advertising. And we organized it by different categories, by industry, by role, by women of color. And then we had a section indicating attributes that you find helpful or just interesting too, because in advertising, there's just obsession with awards. But maybe you just want a nice boss, or you want a badass boss who drives a motorcycle. And so it was really fun to see these descriptions from people, she's a mom of 4 and she wears leather pants. It's yes, I want that as a boss. And we started creating events with agencies, which was super fun. Who hosted us, they paid for food and drinks. And it was basically Alcoholics Anonymous, but for women in advertising. And I called it networking meets therapy meets rosé, and 3 of my favorite things. And it was a really fun time. And then we were also just on the positive side too. We were published in a lot of outlets and Adweek and Ad Age, and even in the New York Times. So things seemed like things were amazing. But the reality, when you build a community like that or a nonprofit, at some point you wonder, can I make a business out of this? Can I live out of this? Me and my co-founder, we were working so much on this, and we were just burning out and just, refusing to be paid, because it was no, this is volunteer. And then we realized, at some point you need to pivot and make this into a business so that you can survive. And I wasn't ready to do that, because often you have to make compromises and you get reached out by brands who have things that they're ashamed of, and they need to clean their reputation. So they're here's a big check. And so that was a moment where I had to make a choice, and it's a side hustle and not a full-time business. And that's how I got to work at that led me to work at Fishbowl. And I'm sharing this because, just a message of hope, for those who maybe aren't sure where they're going in their careers, they're not really happy, but they kind of love the idea of being involved in a community. You don't need to start a community from scratch. You can join communities. There are apps of communities. You can use that experience as leverage, to not completely pivot your career, but you can be like become an engineer at Facebook or Reddit, or you can work in marketing for a nonprofit. You can work for Asians in advertising. So yeah, just like being real with like, the surface, like, yes, we got mentioned in New York Times, but then the reality, life happens, and you can still passionately have that as a side hustle, but also make your main hustle still have a relationship with communities.
I love that. I think a lot of people were resonating with what you were saying in the chat. So we all have this, like, we all started this community where we belong. I wonder if you guys know, how do you guys see the AAPI community continue to grow, especially in a landscape where like we tend to, like Asian people, we tend to just like fall in the background quite a lot. That's the stereotype that exists. So I wonder how you see your community growing and becoming even a force of nature. Eric, do you mind going first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess the short answer is a bit, or it's selfish because it's just my world of film, TV, and music. So we're self-serving, but we do see, even if like the Anderson Paaks of the world, like the music is medicine for him. It's not, he would do this if he was making $5, like it's really for mental health, film, TV, and music. And it's making sure we're able to have a job in the creative industry. That's why, Mara, I really appreciate you, like what you're saying as a creative director. I think it's important to support this new creative class that is emerging. There might be some students out there too, and like hit us up, like whatever jobs, or try to get you jobs, and like get in this business, and create a new creative, outlet for yourself. And so I think I'm excited about when I see, even back to like 88 Rising, this new generation of the creative class growing. They don't have to be like our parents' generation. For ourselves at Eastern Standard Times, because we really focus on global diaspora, is that not only about like mixed race and biracial folks, because there's so many of us and of them in this community, but also like think about like the Japanese Brazilians, or my editor-in-chief Keshia. She's born in Hong Kong. Her mom's Indian, her dad's Australian. Like it's so interesting that this new global mix of Asians. We're all Asian. It doesn't have to be American. And really, like if you ever talk to like Asians in Australia, they deal with the same issues that we deal with too. And so I think as we grow, I would love for us with the internet, post YouTube and BTS and Squid Game and all this amazing stuff with the Korean wave, that we see each other as all Asians on this planet, right? And we're all beautiful and we're all awesome and we're all imperfect too, and not just about Asian Americans. And I think that makes me feel like maybe there's a larger community for us, if that makes sense. Oh, Elizabeth, thank you. I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry, rookie mistake. Tim, maybe you can also help expand to how do you see continue to grow your community, especially with Haerfest and everything that you guys have been doing on the social platforms too.
Sure. I mean, as I've really been embracing more of my kind of Korean culture, I definitely see, us continuing to shift from trying to like assimilate and fit into these like more dated narratives, and that are actually created by people that don't look like us, to truly embracing our cultural identity, really celebrating our differences and the rich stories we have. And I personally really take pride in the benefit of having dual cultures and perspectives that allow me to, to share deeper stories and share narratives that our community could resonate with.
Oh, Liz, you're on mute.
Sorry, you guys. So what advice would you guys have for people who are looking to join a community, or even like help support a community? Or like maybe like Eric, you like teased it up, maybe some of the people here want to start their own community. I know I've been like seeing the chat throughout the day. Like I think someone even threw like, can we start like a Gen Z Asians in advertising? So how would one go about starting that? Mara, maybe you can start with that. Some advice.
Yeah, Well, actually, transparently, I thought this was a different question. I was ready to give my spiel on like just advice in general with API communities. So
General too, yeah. What advice would you have for people? Yeah.
okay, cool. Yeah, I'm really terrible at like off the cuff reactions. Yeah, so I mean the question that I initially understood that I found interesting is yeah, advice like regarding yeah, people from the API community. I think it's just like being considerate of the different personalities that we have that are different from Western society, like you said, Tim, and you know, for me growing up in the Philippines and in France and now working in America and in New York, especially, which is like the mecca of like capitalist Western alphas. And that's not how I grew up in the Philippines. You know, my heart is very Filipino. I am very sensitive and considerate, almost to a fault in this context where, you know, you're expected to be different. And my advice was just making sure that the quiet people in the room feel heard. And I believe this because for me, when people are quiet, usually they have really strong thoughts and they actually have the most thought-provoking things to say, and they're actually the most interesting. So just making sure, yeah, you know, asking for their opinions just helps them feel seen and just helps bring some innovation to the table in the meeting. And, you know, thank goodness now I'm almost 40, so I'm not, you know, like shy about sharing thoughts, but my 25-year-old self would have loved a leader telling me like, Mara, what do you think? And I would have been like, well, let me tell you what I think. And so yeah, that's just my advice there with dealing with us.
I love that. I love that piece of advice. Maybe Tim, maybe you could help give some advice for those who are looking to join, support, or even start their own community. What advice would you have for those people out there?
I mean, I always say that, you know, it's really important to just not ignore your, you know, mental health and wellness just for the sake of your work. And I know within our community, within the API community, there's definitely still a lot of stigma around talking about mental health. So I'd say, you know, really try to build a support system and, you know, join others to uplift each other, to keep each other accountable. And yeah, I just think a lot of times we tend to ignore our own health in the pursuit of achieving great things. But yeah, I would say that.
And maybe Eric, will you have some words of wisdom here to share with everyone?
Yeah, like it's interesting. Like I think it's I don't know. There's two versions. There's like the older me, which is now, and then there's like the younger ones out there that are trying to launch their career or expand their career. It's like from the older me is like, I always just try to plant seeds everywhere I go, right? Even if like I don't see where it goes, like always be like, hey, you two connect. Maybe you have a career here. You know, it just, and it just gives me more purpose and mission, you know, because look, advertising is tough, everyone. We all know it's a grind to or whatever creative business we're in, right? It's not easy too. So sometimes when you get really tired, you need to feel like you're doing something just for the love and passion and helping people. So that's given me all new inspiration, even with this company as well. And so, you know, and then the younger versions of it, I just think it's really amazing to see this new like Asian Gen Z generation, you know, like it is different, you know, like it's pretty darn cool seeing Sangchi and BTS and, you know, Olivia Rodrigo's and just such a different a range of folks. And by the way, it's not about Asians, it's the non-Asians feeling and loving and celebrating our culture. So I'd say just keep flexing that how dope Asian culture is, you know, and if you see anybody trying to hate, because there are always haters out there, you know, don't have to check them, but just, you know, walk away from them. Don't give them my world is like, I always had to deal with that. And I thought I had to just accept it, but you don't, you know, and I think it's an exciting time for the next generation. But the point being of that is always network, always build communities, you know, support each other, and then bring other people into that community. If you see other POCs that are curious, call them out first and we'll come in. Sometimes, you know, Asian communities might be a little bit tight knit too, right? So like, I think it's important to make sure we're always welcoming and bringing all folks in about the whole range.
Yeah, I think it's funny, Eric, you actually mentioned that because I think even when we were prepping our call, you were so excited with our panelists and you're like, let me bring your community into my community, and we're
Yeah,
all
every
starting
day. It's
now.
awesome. How cool is it? You know, we get to connect dots, right? And yeah, so I would say also specific for advertising, because I know I've been just talking about like non-advertising stuff. You know, Cindy Gallup's keynote was incredible. It's just like, let's punch a bit, guys, right? Like, let's not take bullshit if we see it. Like, and even you know, I think Jerry right before this, it's like, call it out. It doesn't have to be every time, but like, it is a bit of a crisis we're into. You know, I wouldn't want to just overlook that, right? It is this month to talk about these things, and like, there are long-term effects when people kind of other us, or you know, there's a cultural erasure that can happen. So just call it out. A lot of these executives, I work with them all my life, Wyatt in 72, whatever production companies, they're good people. They just don't have the context that we have, you know? So just remind them like, hey, you know, maybe on the side, be like, hey, we should try to do this. We should put some money in. I don't know if it's us who was saying that before. It's like, there's money there. Trust me. Those can parties cost a lot of money. You know, do some more things for the API community. It doesn't have to be just May, every month. You know, we are going through a lot right now. So I think that's important.
Yeah, like you said, Eric, like they don't know better, you know, and I think just being patient and open and just be like, hey, by the way, you know, that thing you said there, like maybe next time you should say it differently, and then let's do this, you know, and they're really thankful that you're here to help.
Bring them to the party.
Sorry?
Yeah, welcome them in. Bring them to the party. Welcome them.
Yeah, exactly. Like calling them, yeah, cool.
I love it. I'm starting to see some questions being populated by the panel. So if anyone, well, we can move on to that. But if anyone the attendees wants to drop some more questions in, please do. And I think the very first question that we have here is, what were some challenges you faced when you created your community? Anyone want to start with that? Some challenges that you guys faced.
I would say just opening up and being very like vulnerable and kind of sharing the struggles and challenges that I deal with on a day-to-day as an entrepreneur. I think a lot of times we just want to show all the highlights on social media, and we, you know, a lot of times for me with the brand, I was always kind of behind the scenes. But funny enough, the moments where I would talk about myself and my own personal journey, that would be the times I would get the most engagement with my community. So I think just opening up and putting yourself out there and finding that, you know, I think there's a lot of strength you can get from being vulnerable. So yeah, that's my experience.
Cool. Maybe I'll jump in very briefly. And again, just because I love this variety. So my lane, what I see every day, you know, my staff we're over like 50 people now, which is pretty awesome. But a lot of them are all, you know, half of them are Asian American, half of them are international Asians. And so in the beginning, though, people were kind of confused because Jason and I are so Asian American, like, oh, wait, what, you're doing stories in Indonesia and Taiwan, like, why? And, you know, if you look across, like, especially universities or even out in this audience, like, you know, really bring in like these international students, that group, it's not easy. They left their home country, their friends, to come to NYU, to come work at your company, and really welcoming them in and really validating their story too, as Asians are in this third culture. I think somebody mentioned third culture, equally as our own Asian American journey. Because that in the beginning, it felt like it was one or the other. It's like either you're BTS or you're Daniel Dae Kim, and it's like, wait, they're both Korean, you know, like. So I thought that was an early challenge, but we got through it because we created that bridge and commonality. And then, and a lot of times, I'll speak for myself. I wish I lived in Asia. I wish I was born in Asia. I would have a better connection to my heritage. And a lot of my, you know, Asian friends that are international, they love how American we are. And so there's just a lot to share between. But so we took like a negative and kind of made it into a positive.
I love that. And then in general, what's next for your community? What's next for Harvest, Fishbowl, EST Media?
Cool. Tim, did you want to go or first?
Yeah, sure. Well, I also do I'm like an adjunct professor at FIT in entrepreneurship. And I actually, recent news, I won a grant for a diversity proposal to bring in, thank you, to bring in, you know, API visionary entrepreneurs to talk about, you know, their journey in entrepreneurship as, you know, as an Asian American and what that's like. And I really hope that inspires the faculty and the students to feel inspired. And feel seen and feel like they belong in these creative spaces. Because when I was going to school at that time, I didn't really have many people to look up to. And alongside of that will be an kind of an installation that showcases some of the entrepreneurs from how they started their business ideas as a concept or as a sketch to a fully executed product. And again, just so that people, specifically students that pass by, look at it and say, well, like they can do it, I can do it. So I'm pretty excited about that, which will be in the upcoming fall and spring.
Cool. I'll speak very. Oh, Mara, you want to go?
No, please go ahead.
Okay. Very, so what's next? I mentioned our little prep call before. Is like Keshia, Stephanie, my team. They're all amazing. They're from Vice and CNN and Nat Geo and all that stuff. But they're going around and going to universities now, and we're doing screenings there. So that I'm really excited about next, because you're whether it's to Columbia to in different universities, UCLA, like then we really get to like spend time with these this audience, this Gen Z audience, and hear how important it is for them when they see these themselves on a big screen, and that these stories that they know about, especially again this international student audience that we've been really targeting, that they feel heard, and so it's all about this university tour. It's showing up in IRL, being there to ask questions. We're gonna do an event in a couple of weeks in New York. If you guys are in town, hit us up. We'll invite you. We're doing an event in LA tonight. So it's really showing up in real community. I think that's what's exciting versus just, I think we're all pretty burned out on our screens these days, like it's cool. We're doing so much video content, but we want to make sure we show up as people too.
Amazing. We have a really serious question here. How do you bring a community's mission into our workplace?
Cool. Mara, do you want to start?
Yeah, it's I mean, for Fishbowl, it's pretty simple, because it's actually a really interesting question, because it's all about transparency and honesty. And so we're super honest and transparent at work. I'm so blessed to have bosses I could be super real with, and we stay obviously like constructive, positive, and cordial, but like I have no issues like crying in front of my boss or just talking about, real stuff that's going on. And because of the nature of the values of the app. I'm curious to hear, like, wait, I think for every company, I think what's challenging is like companies that are maybe from a different time, like, I don't know, Cheerios, like what are their values and how does that translate at Cheerios headquarters? I don't know, but for us, it's pretty straightforward.
Oh, Eric, Tim, anyone wanted to chime in on that one either? How do you bring a community's mission into our workplace?
I think Tim built it. That's why but I want to answer for you. I'll speak to before I created this, because I have to say I did build this to feel like, that's just all for that. But like before at, large entertainment companies, they'll be nameless. Again, for me, for whatever reason, I'm always the only Asian, really seriously, always the only Asian executive. And like that, I could have communicated that more to my colleagues and my bosses and be like, hey, like, how can I help? Can we recruit some people? I feel like I'm pitching stories and that people don't understand it. Like I could have communicated it more. Instead, I just put my head down, like it is what it is, and just keep going. And, it took me until my 40s to really have the guts to then build my own company and do it this way. So I think about that often. If I were 30, like I probably would have talked to my bosses more and just communicated like, hey, this is what I'm passionate about. After work, how do I bring it more into the workplace?
Cool. Mara, I actually have a question for you from an audience. How do you actually navigate Fishbowl communities? How do you find one?
Oh, like a FAQ, yeah. Well, in the search bar, you can type, Asians in advertising, or even Asians, because we have different industry communities, which is super interesting. We have consultants, consulting industry, advertising, law, finance, and they're all communities that can't see each other. So every industry thinks they're the only one, but we're doing that so to not overwhelm people with just too many options, and also for each bowl to feel like, oh, these people really get me. And so, yeah, sometimes you might not be able to find bowls because you might not be in the right industry. Liz, for your question on sort of like what you're excited about on just like how the community is going to continue building, just on the Fishbowl side, we're going to be growing more communities and more industries. And what I wanted to share here, just kind of like, I guess, a fun fact, but it's how industry communities are really like people. We have moderators on the platform. They help like maintain a positive community. Otherwise, like online communities can quick like transform into 4chan if there's not somebody leading that. And by the way, the moderation, the head of moderation, she's Asian American. She's amazing, and it's thanks to her that it's an inclusive community. And so the moderators, they have these sort of profiles, and it almost feels like dating profiles or horoscopes, but instead of like a Libra or a Leo, it's consultants are like this, they laugh about this, they don't like this, they're offended by this, and this is what they talk about. So yeah, it's really interesting to read the advertising community profile, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just a big stereotype. So yeah, we're not that unique.
And then Eric, someone in the audience had a question about Open and about the NFT community in general.
Oh, wow. That's a big conversation. That's going to be, you guys going to do Asians and blockchain? Like, you could check it out at op3n.world. It's a long conversation, but it's awesome. It's funny. We didn't plan out launching two brands at the same time. Jason and I are kind of crazy people with ADD, but we started over here. We're still doing EST. We love it, but we also realize, there's the smart contract unlocks so much more storytelling. So it is related. So it's a bit like, Amazon platform and Amazon Studios. So ESCs are studio, but as a technology platform, we're building, using Web3 to really unlock and democratize decentralized storytelling for everybody. So I hope I'll save my pitch for some other time, but essentially, I think a lot about like, I don't know, a young filmmaker, she's in Thailand, she doesn't have access to Hollywood at all, like I did. I'm so privileged in that way, right? Or some, filmmaker in Nigeria or whatever. So how can we use the power of Web3 to allow them to create their own community economy and create their own future, finance their own projects through a community? That's the open side.
And then as you were talking, a very poignant question, Eric, is EST trajectory to be like Vice for Asians?
It's a great question. We spend a lot more time with nothing. Look, Isabel Young's a good friend. If you guys ever watch Isabel Young at Vice News, she's a rock star, real amazing journalist. I'm super proud of Vice News, and I think that, but Vice is 25 years in their journey. So we think a lot about actually New York Times, and things like columns and Modern Love, and like even like we think about like Humans of New York, and like, so we come at, yes, Vice is part of it, but Vice was a cool gonzo punk magazine that went on their own journey. But the short answer is, yeah, imagine like, I don't know, if Idiot Rising and New York Times had a baby, like what would that look like? We do really love our aesthetic. We love things like A24, and that premium aesthetic, creative excellence. We will see where our journey takes us, but thanks for the question. The short answer is sure, yes, absolutely, but in our own way, and definitely in a very global and Asia to the world.
All right, another question here was, hi, I'm just starting out in my career. What communities would you say one should belong to in order to make sure they belong? I mean, I can answer this. I feel like if you're part of the summit, Asians in Advertising, this is a community in itself. It's kind of meta, like we're a community hosting a conversation about communities.
It's happening right now.
Yeah, I know. It's like communities. And then Mara even has a fishbowl, which is communities for communities. So it's kind of like, I think if there is a lot of resource out there, and I know when you're starting your job, when you're first starting your job and first starting your career, it might seem a little intimidating. Especially, I saw a few people comment that they're the only Asians in whatever company they are. I think organizations like Asians in Advertising or anyone like, Harvest or all that stuff, Fishbowl, you can find a community where you belong, and it can get very niche too. So we're like Asians in Advertising, and like I know I brought this up because I saw it. I was like, if you wanted to create a subculture within Asians in Advertising and make that a Gen Z Asians in Advertising, all the power to you to do that,
Totally. I love Gen Z and Asians in Advertising though. That thing, that's gonna be a wild bunch.
I don't know who threw that idea out there. It was like early in the chats. If you guys do that, I'm not Gen Z, but I would love
be a brand to sponsor that. Come on, that's gonna be amazing.
Definitely, like, to add to that, it's like for the person who asks that question to continue networking and meeting people and having cyber coffee chats. It's like a quick tip. Like you can, if you want to reach out to somebody that you kind of admire, like let them know, like, I really admire you for XYZ. And, that person is probably having a bad day. So a little compliment goes a long way. Would you have, 20 minutes to give advice on X? And, something very specific. Giving advice also feels good. People like giving advice. So just like a little tactical.
I think, Mara, you nailed it. That's right. Like, you honestly pay for the premium thing at LinkedIn. It's like $60 a month or whatever, and hit up people that, that directly, and just be very focused and specific and be like, coffee break, cyber coffee break, 20 minutes about this. Because I get hit with all sorts of things, but they're all like spammy ads. But if generally like a younger person's like, hey, Eric, I love that you did this project. It connected with me, and I would just love to pick your brain about that. Like, I just need a break sometimes too. It's good just to feel like I'm doing something good. And yeah, I think that's a great idea for sure. Don't hit them every day.
Someone was also asking, are there any communities out there that you personally recommend or are part of as well? This person trying to network right now with joining more communities.
Yeah. Sign up to Eastern Standard Times. It's a community. Again, I'm not trying to sell it or anything, but it is like, we're going to be doing dope stuff. So sign up. There's a newsletter. It's coming.
And also, like, I mean, I'm not here to sell Fishbowl at all, but there are also different facets to your personality. So let's say you're in data and analytics, or you're a creative and you're Asian too. You can nerd out with specific communities. So it's like Asians in Advertising Bowl, talk about things that are relevant there. And then nerd out on creativity, on design in a different bowl. And then on, like, if, your parents, you nerd out of parenting. So yeah, I think like finding different communities with the different facets of your personality also helps.
Cool. I'd also say something here. I don't know if I noticed this before too. I just think it's awesome that there's so many women in this group too. Most of my bosses were women. I was very fortunate to have that. I'm not sure why, but it's awesome. And then, like, I grew up, like, my mom was a breadwinner in the house too, which is very, like, that generation was very interesting and unique and kind of taboo. But so it just like, this is exciting to me, but there are challenges, right? You guys can, Imara and Gilles probably speak it better than us, but like, get unified, grow and like be a voice. It is an amazing time. And back to like what Cindy Gallup was saying, like all those nuggets that she dropped were just so incredible. So this just is a different face than I grew up in with the, last 20 years of advertising. Is definitely less Don Drapers and more you folks. So dude, hit us up. How do we help your careers? We'll try to, be supportive where we can. So it's awesome.
Yeah. And I think just going back to that question where someone was asking about other communities, another community that Asians in Advertising is actually a partner with is the Asian Creative Foundation. And we're actually speaking, they're also having a creative festival summit next week, which I think a few of our board members and Asians in Advertising members will be speaking in. So that's another organization for all those Asian creative folks out there to join as well. Oh, thank you, Bernice, for sharing that. I guess before we sign off, do you guys, Tim or Eric, have any final goodbye shout outs that you want to do?
I would just say, talking about the support series, if anyone has any kind of cool creatives that they think would be good to feature a highlight, feel free to DM me or email me, because I'm always continuing to look. I started the series just by reaching out with friends or people I've worked with on projects I've done, but then interestingly, I've just gotten a lot of recommendations from those people, and it's just so nice to get referrals or recommendations to just continue sharing more stories. And although people are coming from very different backgrounds and cultures, there are a lot of similarities and patterns, and it just further reinforces why I feel it's so important for us to share our stories.
Dope. I would say for me, and then I'll just very quickly, like, I don't know how many out there are in the agency world or different parts of media, but like, Bernice, you could follow up like with my email. Again, if you're looking for a gig or want to pick anybody's brain, it's not just me too. I have 22 on the Eastern Standard side, amazing staff. We will try to get to any questions you have. And also like, look, we need brand support too. So I'll shield us a little bit too. It's hard, like, launching a new journalism brand. So if you guys feel like there's any brands that you guys work on that might be interested in our story too, we'd appreciate it. So yeah, let's all just stay in touch.
Yeah, and if anybody needs any advice on, growing as a creative and ad agency, but also like moving brand side and tech, and like, should we go brand side or go back to agency? Happy to talk about that too.
Amazing. Well, thank you all for joining. Bernice has been live linking all the
amazing. Like an AI bot. Bernice, you're incredible.
I appreciate Bernice in the background doing all that work.
Also, Liz, thank you for organizing this amazing group of panelists. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I will actually, with that, Tim, you actually reminded me, Tim's small business Haerfest, you guys, is part of our digital guide. At the end, we have a small business section where we have partnered with about, I want to say 18 small business, API owned small businesses for you to actually enjoy a little bit of a code that is only given to you as our attendees. So we hope you guys all enjoy that.
Cool. Tim, let's do an EST collab with Haerfest.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Community
creative director, Elizabeth. We can do it all. Yeah, this will be our project. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. I actually do have one finishing thought.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
No, just just like a general advice also on continuing your career path. Tim and Eric, they build awesome businesses. Like, I found that if you propose your help and you volunteer to folks, like you get the gifts of I forgot the expression, you get the seeds you plant, you get the plant back or whatever. But I wouldn't be shy about helping others. I found in my career that every time I've genuinely just helped others, it came back to me, whether it's like 5 years later, 10 years later. So yeah, if Eric and Tim need volunteers, I encourage you to reach out.
That's the best advice, honestly. It really does. Yeah. Helping people really helps yourself too. And together, yeah, we build new communities. This is exciting. Cool. Well, nice meeting everybody. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Elizabeth.